let's talk about exits. Exits are as important, or if not as important, as entries, right? Knowing when to take profit is the difference between a profit or a loss in a trade, right? The first type of exit I want to talk about is pretty straightforward, right? This is pretty straightforward. This works best on the high time frames, so daily, weekly, monthly, they work the best, right? So it's pretty much just the previous day or the previous candle low or high. The reason why this works so well, right, is if you're in the weekly, targeting your previous candle low or high is still significant price action, right? Because one candle represents a week of price action, right? If your TP is a previous candle low or high, that means you're take profiting at the previous week's low or high, if that makes sense, right? So your TP would be the lowest point from last week's, right? And if you've caught the top, right? If you know what you're looking for, if you know the order flow, if you know the bias, and if you know create yourself a story, that's still enough for the week, right? Here, your first TP could be that low, which is mitigated the fair value gap and which is swept previous candle high, right? So now our first TP can be here, right? This low here, right? If you're catching entries on the 1 hour, it's still significant enough of price action to be happy with, right? You can still be content with this type of price action, this type of R. And yeah, this works best with higher time frame, right? So daily, weekly, monthly, maybe 4 hour, right? But it works best with high time frame just because you have more price action between the time frames, right? So the higher the time frame, the better for this one. The second one is fair value gaps, right? You guys know I love fair value gaps. So for the weekly, right? Say if you caught some sort of long, right? Say you caught a long here. Your TP should always be this fair value gap, right? And again, that works with our previous exit, the previous candle high or low, right? So if you look at price action, it usually versus after it takes out the previous candle high or low, right? So here, you see that impulse up, here, 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 impulse down, here, impulse up, right? So it's always safe to target your previous candle high or low, right? And if you have a fair value gap, right, that lets you know which one to target, right? Or should you target the previous one, or should you target the one above, right? If there's a fair value gap, then I'll probably target the one with the fair value gap, right? So that could be above, lower, right? My first TP is always a fair value gap, right? So say if we're bearish, right, and we have this fair value gap here, we can label this imbalance a daily fair value gap, right? Daily imbalance. Fine. Now, if price wants to go higher, then price will go higher, right? But this destination will be reached first, if that makes sense. If price wants to go lower, right, depending on how we trade, I trade with fair value gaps, right? So I'm anticipating on price coming up here and going down, right? So if I'm in a counter trend trade, say I'm in a long, my first TP is here. Why? Because that's the area of reversal, right? So if it does reverse, I want to TP up there. I'm not TPing at this high, this high, this high. I'm TPing here, right? If price is bearish and we have a daily fair value gap and I'm somehow in the long, my TP will be this daily fair value gap, right? Why? Because it's an area of reversal. I'm not waiting for this here, this here, this here. I'm not waiting for those highs to get swept. Why? Because if the order flow is bearish, price will come up to this daily fair value gap, mitigate it, and push down, right? If price is bullish, this is still going to be a target, right? If we're bullish, this is still a target, right? If it runs, we're going to reach here first, right? So I want to secure my profits at this fair value gap, right? This works pro trend, counter trend, right? FVGs are very safe areas of TPing, right? So try utilizing a bit more. And the third one is IDR, right? Inducement range. For me, a range with no fair value gap has no bearing on the order flow, right? So if there's no fair value gap in a range down, right, I'm waiting for this range to get swept, right? So I'm expecting price to come up here, sweep it, and push down, right? I'm not waiting for price to, I'm not anticipating price on reversing here or here or here. If there's no fair value gap, I'm assuming that high or low of that range will get swept, right? and then it should start creating your fair value gaps, right? So you can see this happening everywhere, right? So here, so you have this little leg down, right? But this little leg has no fair value gaps, right? So it has no order flow. For me, that means this high is getting swept, right? So if you went along, right, say if you caught a long here or anything, right, your first initial TP should be here. And if you also look to the left, fair value gap, right? So every concept that I'm teaching you guys, learn to use them, study them, see how they work, right? So in this little leg down, right, there is no bearish fair value gap, right? So there's no bearish order flow in this price action here, right? So for me, that means it's getting swept, right? Same thing down here. There's no bullish fair value gap, right? So there's no bullish order flow in this leg up, right? So that means that low is getting swept, and this high is also getting swept, right? And if we jump in the lower time frame, 4 hour, what do we see? Pretty much see the same shit, right? From this high to this low, there was no bearish order flow, right? So if you were in a long, right, say you entered long here, your TP should be up there. So if you somehow entered a long here, your TP should be up there, right? Because this range here is not significant enough, right? So price shouldn't really come up here and reverse and take you out, right? Personally, like obviously understand context, right? Understand context, study it, test it, right? But for me, this kind of how I trade, right? And since we're looking at the high time frame too, this low is weak too, right? This low should get swept. Price should act as a magnet to this low, right? Just like how price is a magnet to that high, right? So you could pretty much know which leg. So you could pretty much know which leg and which range is going to get swept or not, right?